Welcome to True Betrayal Stories, where secrets are exposed, lies unravel, and justice is served. If you love shocking betrayal stories and satisfying revenge, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss an update. They say blood is thicker than water, but what if the very person you trusted the most betrayed you in the most unforgivable way? Imagine loving someone your entire life, only to have them tear your world apart with the one person you never suspected. In this story, loyalty will be tested and betrayal will cut deeper than anyone could imagine. Aaron wiped the sweat from his forehead as he pushed the heavy lawnmower across the yard. The sun beat down mercilessly, but he didn't mind. Yard work had always been his way of clearing his mind, a welcome distraction from the stress of work and life. As he looked around, he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The house was his pride and joy, the result of years of hard work, dedication, and sacrifice. From the open window, he could hear his wife, Jessica, laughing with their two kids, Owen and Mia. Their giggles filled the air, and Aaron couldn't help but smile. Jessica had always been the heart of their home, bright, loving, and full of life. Or at least that's how it used to be. Lately, something had changed. She seemed distracted, always on her phone, always texting with a faint smile on her lips. Aaron tried to brush it off at first, convincing himself that it was just his mind playing tricks on him. After all, they had been together since college, high school sweethearts who promised each other forever. But no matter how much he tried to ignore it, the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. Then there was Connor, his younger brother, just a few years his junior. Connor had always been the golden child, no matter how much of a troublemaker he was. Growing up, Aaron was the responsible one, the kid who got straight A's and helped out around the house. Connor, on the other hand, was the reckless, charming little devil who could do no wrong in their parents' eyes. When Connor got caught sneaking out past midnight, it was boys will be boys. When he crashed Dad's car at 16, it was just a mistake, give him a break. And when he failed his classes repeatedly, their mom simply said, "He's just not as academically inclined as you, Aaron." It wasn't fair. It had never been fair. But Aaron learned to live with it. He let Connor get away with things because pushing back only made him look like the bad guy. Even when Connor moved in with them temporarily after losing his job, Aaron swallowed his frustration. He couldn't say no. His parents wouldn't have it. One evening, after finishing up the yard work, Aaron stepped into the house to find Connor sitting at the kitchen counter, laughing with Jessica. The way they looked at each other made his stomach tighten. Jessica was wearing that red dress, the one Aaron loved, and Connor was leaning in just a little too close. "Hey," Aaron greeted, forcing a smile. Jessica looked up a bit startled. "Oh, hey, honey, I didn't hear you come in." Connor grinned, raising his beer. "Just catching up with Jess. You know, old times and all." Aaron forced a nod, though something about the way Connor said her name made his skin crawl. Dinner that night was tense. Jessica was overly cheerful, asking Connor about his plans and laughing at every lame joke he cracked. Aaron couldn't help but notice how Connor would casually touch her arm or lean in close when talking. He clenched his jaw, trying to focus on his plate rather than the nauseating sight. That night, as they lay in bed, Aaron turned to Jessica, his voice low and cautious. "Is everything all right between us?" he asked. Jessica looked at him with mild surprise. "Of course. Why would you ask that?" He hesitated. "I don't know. You've just seemed distant lately." She shrugged, brushing it off. "It's nothing. Just stressed with work and the kids. Maybe we need a date night or something." Aaron wanted to believe her. He wanted to hold on to that sense of security he once felt, but his instincts wouldn't let him. As Jessica fell asleep beside him, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind swirling with doubt and frustration. Over the next few days, Connor seemed to be around more often, always dropping by unannounced, always with some excuse to be there. Whether it was helping out with the garage or catching up with the kids, he had an uncanny ability to weasel his way into their lives. Jessica didn't seem to mind. If anything, she seemed more animated when Connor was around. One evening, Aaron came home early from work, hoping to surprise Jessica with her favorite takeout. As he approached the driveway, he noticed Connor's truck parked outside. His stomach twisted uncomfortably, but he convinced himself it was nothing. Connor was probably just hanging out with the kids. As Aaron opened the front door, He heard hushed voices and quiet laughter coming from the living room. Moving cautiously, he peered around the corner and froze. Jessica was sitting on the couch, her legs casually draped over Connor's lap as they shared a drink. Connor leaned in close, whispering something that made Jessica giggle and blush. Aaron's hands clenched into fists, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear. Anger, disbelief, and betrayal flooded through him, threatening to consume every rational thought. He pulled out his phone, snapping a quick picture through the gap in the door, capturing their intimacy as undeniable proof. He backed away, his chest heaving with the weight of realization. He felt sick, sick to his stomach at the thought of his own brother doing this to him, sick that the woman he loved could betray him so easily. He drove aimlessly for hours trying to process the pain that had embedded itself into his heart like a cruel twisting knife. When he finally returned home, the house was quiet. Jessica was asleep, looking peaceful as if nothing had happened. Connor was gone, his truck no longer in the driveway. Aaron leaned against the doorframe, fighting back tears as he stared at the woman he once thought he knew better than anyone. The next morning, as Aaron sat at the breakfast table, absent-mindedly scrolling through his phone, Jessica approached him with a cheerful smile. She placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of him and sat down across the table, her eyes unusually bright and eager. "Hey, babe," she began almost too sweetly. "I was thinking, we haven't really had a family outing in a while. How about a weekend trip? Just us and the kids. Get away from the stress of work for a bit." Aaron looked up from his phone, caught a little off guard by her sudden enthusiasm. "A trip? Where to?" Jessica bit her lip, pretending to think it over. "Maybe that little cabin up by Lake Arrowhead? We haven't been there in years. The kids would love it." Aaron couldn't deny it sounded nice. They used to go up to the cabin back when things were simpler, before work became overwhelming, before doubts crept into his mind. He gave her a small smile. "Yeah, that could be good. The kids could use some fresh air." Jessica's face lit up, and she reached out to squeeze his hand. "Great! I'll start making arrangements." As she got up and headed to the kitchen, Aaron couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this trip would help them reconnect. Maybe he'd been overthinking everything after all. Later that evening, just as Aaron was wrapping up some paperwork in his home office, his phone buzzed. A message from Connor popped up on the screen. "Yo, bro, Jess just told me you guys are planning a trip to Lake Arrowhead. That's awesome. You mind if I tag along? Haven't been up there in forever." Aaron frowned, confused. He hadn't even agreed to the trip yet. Why was Jessica already telling Connor about it? His stomach twisted uncomfortably, but he forced himself to respond calmly. Yeah, I guess that'd be fine. Haven't really nailed down the plan yet." Almost instantly, another message came through. "Sweet. I'll bring some beer and fishing gear. You know, good old brother time. Looking forward to it." Aaron put his phone down, a knot of unease forming in his chest. Something didn't feel right. Why would Jessica mention the trip to Connor before even finalizing it with him? And why did Connor sound so damn enthusiastic about it? The next few days were a blur of preparations, but Aaron couldn't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at him. Jessica seemed almost too eager to make everything perfect, packing snacks, buying new blankets, planning activities. And every time she mentioned Connor coming along, she had this odd, almost forced cheerfulness in her voice. On Friday evening, as they loaded up the car, Connor pulled into the driveway, grinning as usual. He tossed his duffel bag into the back and clapped Aaron on the shoulder. "Man, I can't wait for this trip," Connor said, flashing that familiar, overly confident smile. "Gonna be good to relax for a change." Aaron forced a smile, trying to ignore the uncomfortable tension between them. Jessica, meanwhile, was bustling around, making sure the kids had their tablets and snacks for the ride. Connor didn't even glance at her, but Aaron couldn't help but notice how Jessica seemed to look just a little too long at him when she thought no one was paying attention. During the drive up to the cabin, Connor sat in the passenger seat, while Jessica and the kids took the back. Connor kept cracking jokes, trying to keep the mood light, but Aaron could feel the tension seeping into every mile they traveled. Halfway there, they stopped at a small rest area to stretch their legs. As the kids played near the picnic tables, Aaron leaned against the car, staring off into the trees, trying to clear his head. Connor wandered over, nudging his shoulder. "You good, man?" Connor asked, looking too casual for Aaron's liking. Aaron forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired from work, I guess." Connor smirked. "You always work too hard. That's why you need weekends like this. Just let loose a little. Something about his tone made Aaron's skin crawl. He wasn't sure if it was the way Connor looked at him, like he knew something Aaron didn't, or just his gut telling him to be on alert. Either way, he didn't respond. He just nodded, pretending to agree. Once they reached the cabin, Jessica busied herself unpacking while the kids ran off to explore the area. Connor immediately started setting up the fire pit, calling for Aaron to help him gather wood. As they wandered into the trees, Connor seemed unusually chatty, reminiscing about their childhood, talking about how he missed hanging out just the two of them. You know, Connor started, his tone oddly sincere, I always looked up to you, Aaron. Even if it didn't seem like it, you were the one who had it all together. Aaron glanced at him, caught off guard. What brought that on? Connor just shrugged, giving him a half smile. Nothing, just thinking. You're lucky, you know? Beautiful wife, great kids, solid life. Not everyone has that. Aaron couldn't help but feel a sting of bitterness. Connor had always been good at playing the victim, making himself seem like the poor, unlucky one while manipulating everyone around him. Aaron wasn't falling for it this time. They gathered enough wood and made their way back to the cabin, where Jessica was already prepping dinner. Aaron couldn't help but notice how she glanced at Connor when she thought Aaron wasn't looking. It was subtle, but it was there, the way her smile lingered just a little too long. That night, after the kids were asleep and the fire crackled outside, Jessica suggested they all sit around and share stories like they used to. Connor eagerly agreed, popping open a beer and grinning at Jessica in a way that made Aaron's blood boil. As they laughed and shared memories, Aaron forced himself to appear relaxed. Even though his insides were churning with anger and suspicion, he kept waiting for something to slip, for one of them to give away more than they meant to. And then it happened. Connor, clearly a little tipsy, leaned back in his chair and looked straight at Jessica. You remember that time we... Well, never mind. Guess it's not important. Jessica's face flushed instantly, and she shot him a look that screamed, shut up. Aaron's heart pounded. Something about that exchange was wrong. Too familiar. He forced a laugh, trying to keep his tone light. What was that about? Aaron asked casually, hiding the tension in his voice. Jessica quickly interjected. Oh, just something silly from a while back. Nothing worth mentioning. But Aaron wasn't buying it. He couldn't ignore the way Connor smirked, like he was proud of whatever secret they shared. Aaron clenched his fists under the table, trying to maintain his composure while his mind raced with possibilities. The rest of the night was a blur. Aaron played along, laughing at jokes and pretending nothing was wrong, but his heart was pounding the whole time. He knew he had to dig deeper, find out what the hell was going on. As he lay in bed that night, with Jessica curled up beside him, he made up his mind. He wouldn't rest until he knew the truth. Aaron woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside the cabin window. Jessica was already up making breakfast in the small kitchen, while the kids were playing on the porch. Connor was nowhere in sight, and for a brief moment, Aaron allowed himself to hope that maybe his brother had left early or gone to town for supplies. He got up, stretched, and made his way to the kitchen, where Jessica greeted him with a warm smile. Morning, sleepyhead, she teased, sliding a plate of pancakes onto the counter. You were out like a light last night. Aaron forced a chuckle. Yeah, must have been the fresh air. Connor went for a run down the trail, Jessica said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. He'll be back soon. Aaron's jaw clenched involuntarily, but he masked his frustration with a nod. Right. Always got to stay in shape, huh? Jessica laughed, but there was something off about it, something forced. Aaron couldn't help but notice how she avoided his gaze, focusing too intently on flipping pancakes. After breakfast, Aaron decided to take the kids down to the lake for a bit of fishing. The water was calm and peaceful, the kind of serenity that usually put him at ease. Owen was determined to catch the biggest fish, while Mia giggled as her bobber danced on the water's surface. As they sat on the dock, Connor jogged up, shirtless and glistening with sweat. He flashed a cocky grin, his breathing only slightly labored. Morning, bro, Connor greeted cheerfully. You guys already started without me? Aaron gave him a forced smile, holding back the urge to snap at him. Figured you were still out running. Connor dropped down next to him, giving Owen a playful shove on the shoulder. Catch anything yet, champ? Not yet, Owen replied, concentrating hard on his fishing line. Connor glanced over at Aaron, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. Man, it's hot out. Should have jumped in the lake instead of running. Aaron didn't respond. his focus glued to the water. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed Jessica walking down the trail toward them, carrying a cooler full of drinks. Connor's face lit up when he saw her, and Aaron's stomach twisted. Jessica set the cooler down and handed them bottled waters. Connor made a show of cracking his open and taking a long, exaggerated gulp, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "You're gonna dehydrate yourself, dumbass," Aaron muttered, half joking. Connor laughed and patted his brother on the back a little too hard. "Relax, man. This is supposed to be a fun weekend, remember?" Aaron nodded, swallowing down his irritation. It felt like Connor was testing him, pushing his buttons just to see how far he could go before Aaron snapped. Later that afternoon, while Jessica took the kids back to the cabin for lunch, Connor lingered by the water with Aaron. The air felt thick with tension, and Aaron tried to keep his hands steady as he reeled in his line. "Hey, man," Connor started, his tone oddly sincere. "You ever just feel like you're missing something? Like life's just passing you by and you're stuck in the same damn routine?" Aaron gave him a sideways glance. "What are you getting at?" Connor shrugged, skipping a rock across the surface of the lake. "Just wondering if you're happy. You know, with everything." The question hit harder than it should have, and Aaron felt his jaw tighten. "Why wouldn't I be?" Connor hesitated, his expression shifting from casual to almost contemplative. "I don't know. You just seem tense lately, like something's eating at you." Aaron resisted the urge to snap. "Work's been stressful, that's all." "Yeah, work," Connor mumbled almost to himself. Then he looked directly at Aaron, his eyes strangely piercing. "You know you can talk to me, right? About anything." Aaron forced a tight smile. "I'm good. Don't worry about it." Connor nodded, but there was something in his gaze that unsettled Aaron, like he was sizing him up, testing his reaction. It wasn't until later that night, when they were all gathered around the fire pit, that things took another unsettling turn. Jessica brought out marshmallows and chocolate bars, insisting they make s'mores. Connor took over roasting the marshmallows, spinning exaggerated tales about their childhood to entertain the kids. Owen and Mia laughed, completely captivated by their uncle's stories, while Aaron sat back, trying to convince himself that everything was fine. Out of nowhere, Connor threw an arm around Jessica's shoulders, giving her a playful squeeze. "Remember when we went camping up at Bear Creek and almost got lost because you insisted on leading the way?" Jessica laughed, leaning into him slightly. "Hey, I had the map. It's not my fault it was outdated." Aaron's stomach dropped, and he couldn't help but stare at how comfortably they leaned against each other. A low, cold anger simmered inside him. Jessica turned to Aaron, oblivious to his expression. "You were too stubborn to ask for directions back then," she teased. "Maybe," Aaron replied, his voice flat. "But at least I didn't follow someone blindly into the woods." Jessica and Connor both glanced at him, momentarily caught off guard by his tone. Connor cleared his throat and handed Owen another marshmallow. "Man, I'm starving. What's for dinner tomorrow, Jess?" Jessica looked thoughtful. "I was thinking burgers and hot dogs. Keep it simple." Connor smirked. "Sounds good to me. I'll man the grill. You know I make the best burgers." Aaron bit back his irritation. He didn't want Connor grilling. He didn't want him acting like the head of the household. But Jessica seemed completely on board, nodding enthusiastically. As the night went on, Connor and Jessica continued to exchange subtle glances and playful nudges. To anyone else, it might have seemed like innocent fun, but Aaron saw it for what it truly was, a calculated display of closeness, right under his nose. When the fire finally died down and the kids fell asleep, Aaron slipped out to the porch, needing air. His heart felt heavy, and the weight of betrayal crushed his chest. He wasn't just losing his wife, he was losing his brother. And no matter how much he tried to rationalize it, it didn't make sense. He didn't know how long he stood there staring into the darkness, but eventually Connor came out, holding 2 beers. He offered one to Aaron with that same cocky grin. "Man, you look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders," Connor said, leaning against the railing. Aaron took the beer but didn't drink. He couldn't bring himself to pretend everything was okay. "You ever feel guilty, Connor?" Connor raised an eyebrow. "Guilty about what?" Aaron's jaw tightened. "About the way you treat people, the way you act like nothing's ever your fault." Connor's grin faded, replaced with a more guarded look. "What's that supposed to mean?" Aaron finally met his brother's eyes, his own filled with cold determination. "You're reckless. Always have been. And one day it's going to catch up with you." Connor scoffed. "Chill out, man. You're overthinking everything." But Aaron didn't respond. He just watched as Connor took another swig of his beer, completely oblivious to the trap he was walking into. Because Aaron had made a decision, he wasn't going to confront them directly. Not yet. Instead, he was going to make sure that when the truth came out, it would destroy them both. Aaron barely slept that night. His mind kept replaying every interaction between Jessica and Connor, scrutinizing every glance, every touch, every careless laugh. The rage that burned in his chest made it almost impossible to breathe. He couldn't stay still, couldn't let his thoughts settle, couldn't stop imagining the two of them behind his back, laughing at him, mocking his trust. The next morning, Jessica was already up making breakfast. She seemed to be in an unusually cheerful mood, humming softly to herself. Aaron forced himself to act normal, even though every nerve in his body was on edge. He couldn't give anything away, not yet. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, Connor sauntered into the kitchen, yawning exaggeratedly. "Morning, lovebirds," he quipped, flashing a grin at Jessica, who gave him a playful eye roll. "Don't be dramatic," she teased. "Coffee's on the counter. Help yourself." Aaron clenched his jaw as Connor walked past him, brushing a little too close for comfort. Jessica didn't seem to notice, but Aaron caught the fleeting smirk on Connor's face. The bastard knew what he was doing. He was playing with him, taunting him, and it made Aaron's blood boil. Connor poured himself a cup and leaned against the counter, glancing over at Jessica. "So what's the plan for today?" he asked. Jessica looked thoughtful. "I figured we'd take the kids down to the lake for some swimming and fishing. They've been looking forward to it." Connor grinned. "Sounds good. Maybe I'll show Owen how to catch something bigger than a minnow this time." Aaron couldn't help but interject, his tone colder than he intended. "Owen's been getting pretty good with the rod. Doesn't need much help these days." Connor raised an eyebrow, giving him a look that was just shy of mocking. "Hey, I'm just giving the kids some tips. No harm in that." Jessica shot Aaron a quick look, as if warning him not to start a fight. "Relax, Aaron," she said lightly. "Connor's just being helpful." Aaron didn't respond. Instead, he just gave a curt nod and took his coffee out to the porch. Needing a moment to cool down, he could hear Connor and Jessica talking behind him, their voices low and comfortable, and it made his stomach twist with anger. After breakfast, they packed up some snacks and towels, getting ready to head down to the lake. Aaron watched as Connor helped Jessica load the cooler into the back of the truck, his hand grazing hers in a way that made Aaron's jaw tighten. Jessica laughed at something Connor said, her face lighting up in that familiar, radiant way that used to be just for him. It hurt more than he wanted to admit. As they drove to the lake, Aaron kept quiet, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The kids were chattering excitedly in the back seat, oblivious to the tension that filled the cab. Connor sat in the passenger seat, far too comfortable for Aaron's liking. When they reached the lake, Connor immediately started unloading the gear, cracking jokes with Owen while Jessica set up the picnic area. Aaron kept his distance, needing to clear his head before he did something reckless. The peaceful surroundings did little to calm the storm inside him. After setting up the grill, Connor tossed Aaron a beer, grinning like they were just two brothers hanging out without a care in the world. Aaron barely caught it, his reflexes dulled by the haze of betrayal that clouded his mind. "Lighten up, man," Connor said, twisting the cap off his own bottle. "You've been wound up all weekend. Just chill out and enjoy the lake." Aaron forced a tight smile. "Yeah, sure." Jessica approached, her hands full of plates and utensils. "Can one of you get the cooler out of the truck? I forgot to grab it." "I got it," Connor volunteered, giving her a little wink before heading back up the trail. Jessica watched him go, her expression oddly wistful. Once Connor was out of earshot, Aaron couldn't hold back any longer. "Why does he have to be here?" he asked quietly, keeping his tone low so the kids wouldn't hear. Jessica shot him a confused look. "What do you mean?" Aaron took a deep breath, fighting to keep his composure. "This was supposed to be a family trip, just us. But somehow, he's always around." Jessica's face hardened slightly, as if she didn't appreciate his tone. "He's your brother, Aaron. He just wants to spend time with us. You've been so stressed lately. I thought having him around might help lighten things up." Aaron couldn't believe her casual dismissal. "It's not just that. It's how you two act around each other. Like you're closer than you should be." Jessica's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing her face before she quickly masked it with forced calm. "What are you talking about? You're imagining things." "Am I?" Aaron snapped, louder than he meant to. He quickly glanced back to make sure the kids didn't hear. You think I don't notice how you look at him? Or how he always finds a reason to touch you? You're not fooling anyone. Jessica's mouth opened and closed, as if trying to find the right words. Before she could respond, Connor reappeared, carrying the cooler, completely oblivious to the tension he just walked into. Everything good here? Connor asked, raising an eyebrow. Jessica plastered on a smile. Yeah, just figuring out lunch, she replied too quickly. Aaron turned away, feeling like he was suffocating. He needed a break, needed to clear his mind before he did something reckless. As Connor fired up the grill, chatting animatedly with Owen, Aaron wandered down to the edge of the lake, staring at the calm water that did nothing to soothe his turmoil. He heard footsteps behind him and didn't bother turning around, knowing it was Connor. What's going on with you, man? Connor asked, keeping his tone casual. You've been acting weird all weekend. Aaron clenched his jaw, trying to keep his emotions in check. Just work stress, that's all. Connor patted his shoulder, like he had no idea what was tearing Aaron apart. You're always stressing, dude. You gotta learn to let loose. Life's too short to be so wound up. Aaron turned to look at him, the anger barely contained in his eyes. Maybe you're right, he said coldly. Maybe I just need to let go. Connor gave him a strange look, but Aaron didn't elaborate. He just turned back to the lake, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. He wasn't going to let this slide. If Connor and Jessica thought they could get away with this, they had another thing coming. He was done being the good guy, the one who always forgave, always let things slide. This time they were going to pay. As the day went on, Aaron struggled to keep his emotions in check. The casual touches, the playful banter, the way Jessica and Connor seemed so at ease with each other. It was like a knife twisting deeper into his gut with every passing moment. He felt like an outsider in his own family, watching the woman he loved act like a carefree, flirty version of herself. Just not with him. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the lake, Aaron couldn't take it anymore. He excused himself, pretending he needed to get more firewood from the cabin. As he walked away, he heard Connor's voice behind him, volunteering to help. Aaron didn't object. In fact, he welcomed it. Maybe a part of him wanted to confront Connor right then and there. Maybe he was just too angry to think straight. They walked in silence through the winding trail back to the cabin, the air thick with unspoken tension. When they reached the cabin, Aaron grabbed the firewood from the shed, stacking it in his arms. Connor leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching him with that infuriating smirk. You know you're being kind of a buzzkill, bro, Connor said, his tone just teasing enough to grate on Aaron's nerves. Aaron didn't bother looking at him. I'm not in the mood for your shit right now. Connor scoffed, not taking him seriously. What's got you so worked up? You've been sulking all day. Aaron dropped the firewood onto the ground, finally losing his patience. He turned around, eyes blazing with restrained fury. You think I'm stupid, don't you? Connor's grin faltered for a moment before he forced it back. What are you talking about? Aaron took a step closer, his voice dangerously low. I'm not blind, Connor. I see how you look at her. I see how she looks at you. Connor's eyes narrowed, but he kept his composure. You're imagining things. You know how Jess is. She's just friendly. Aaron barked out a bitter laugh. Friendly? Is that what you call it? You're pushing your luck, Connor. I swear to God, if you don't back off. Connor raised his hands defensively, but his eyes were mocking. Relax, man. You're being paranoid. Jess and I are just friends. You know that. Friends don't look at each other the way you two do. Aaron shot back, his voice raw with pain. And they sure as hell don't sneak around behind their brother's back. Connor's expression hardened. For a moment, his usual carefree demeanor slipped, replaced by something colder. Maybe you should ask Jess how she feels about all this. Maybe if you weren't such a control freak, she wouldn't need someone to actually make her feel alive. The words hit Aaron like a physical blow, and his fists clenched at his sides. Connor looked at him, almost daring him to make a move, but Aaron forced himself to take a deep breath and calm down. Beating his brother to a pulp wouldn't fix anything. It would only make him look like the crazy one. Before he could say anything else, Jessica called out from the campsite, her voice cheerful and oblivious to the tension between the brothers. Hey, you guys done out there? The fire's getting low. Aaron glared at Connor one last time before grabbing the firewood and marching back toward the campsite. Connor followed at a leisurely pace, clearly unfazed by the confrontation. The whole interaction left a bitter taste in Aaron's mouth, but he knew better than to let it show. The rest of the evening was strained. Jessica tried to keep up the cheerful atmosphere, playing games with the kids and roasting marshmallows, but Aaron was too distracted to fully participate. Connor, on the other hand, acted completely normal, as if nothing had happened. When it was finally time to put the kids to bed, Jessica offered to take care of them, leaving Aaron and Connor alone by the dying fire. Aaron poked at the embers with a stick, his mind racing with too many conflicting emotions to sort through. Connor broke the silence first, his voice low and almost conspiratorial. "You're not going to ruin this trip for everyone, are you? The kids are having a blast." Jessica's finally relaxed. "Don't go blowing everything up because you're feeling insecure." Aaron didn't look at him. "I'm not the one blowing things up. You are. Both of you." Connor leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't have proof of anything. All you've got is your own paranoia. And if you push too hard, you're just going to look like the bad guy. You know how Jess hates it when you get all controlling." Aaron's hands tightened on the stick, threatening to snap it in half. Connor had always been good at turning things around, making himself look innocent while Aaron came off as the overreacting older brother. It was a pattern that had been there since they were kids, and Aaron hated how easily Connor manipulated every situation. "Just let it go, Aaron," Connor continued, almost like he was giving advice. "Take a breath. Enjoy the weekend. Don't make a scene. It's better for everyone." Aaron forced himself to remain calm, refusing to let Connor get the satisfaction of seeing him snap. "Don't worry," he said flatly. "I'm not making a scene. I'm just watching and waiting. Because eventually the truth comes out. And when it does, you'd better be ready to face the consequences." Connor just gave him a lazy smile, clearly unfazed. "Whatever you say, big bro, just remember, you're the one making things complicated, not me." As Connor wandered back toward the cabin, leaving Aaron alone by the fire, Aaron felt a cold determination settle over him. Connor thought he was in control, thought he could manipulate his way through this like he always did. But Aaron wasn't going to play along. He wasn't going to let Connor win this time. He stayed by the fire for a long time, staring into the flickering flames as his mind worked through his next move. Connor had always gotten away with everything, never facing consequences for his actions. But this time would be different. Aaron was done playing the fool. If they thought they could walk all over him, they were dead wrong. A plan started to form in his mind, fueled by a combination of anger, betrayal, and determination. He knew he couldn't just confront them outright. Connor was too good at twisting the story and making Aaron look crazy. No, he needed undeniable proof, something that would expose their betrayal in a way that no one could deny. As the fire burned down to embers, Aaron finally rose to his feet, his jaw set with grim determination. He wasn't just going to get even. He was going to make sure Connor and Jessica paid for every lie, every betrayal, every ounce of pain they had put him through. And when it was over, they would finally know what it felt like to lose everything. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon when Aaron stirred awake, still lying on the stiff mattress in the cabin. He could hear the soft rustling sounds of Jessica moving around, packing up their things. The kids were still asleep, sprawled out on their sleeping bags on the floor. Connor's obnoxious snoring from the other room made Aaron grit his teeth, but he forced himself to keep his composure. It was the last day of the camping trip, and Aaron couldn't have been more relieved. He had spent the last few days playing along with the charade, pretending everything was normal while meticulously gathering evidence and preparing for what came next. Now it was almost over, and he could finally put his plan into motion. As Jessica stuffed the last of the clothes into a duffel bag, she caught Aaron's eye and gave him a tired smile. "Almost ready to head out. Kids are still knocked out, though." Aaron nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, I'll start loading the truck." He slipped out of bed and grabbed his duffel, his mind already racing through the next steps. On the way home, he planned to make a detour, telling Jessica he needed to drop by the hardware store for something. It wasn't unusual for him to make quick stops on the way back from trips, so she wouldn't suspect anything. But instead of going to the store, he'd be meeting with his lawyer to finalize his next moves. By the time everyone was up and moving, the cabin was a flurry of packing and cleaning. Connor sauntered out of the spare room, stretching like he hadn't a care in the world. He shot Aaron a grin, as if expecting some kind of brotherly banter. Aaron just gave him a tight nod, refusing to play along. After a quick breakfast, they loaded up the car, with Connor insisting on taking the front seat while Jessica buckled the kids in. Aaron barely acknowledged him, too focused on keeping his emotions in check. He couldn't let anything slip. Not now. Not when they were so close to the endgame. The drive back was filled with the usual chatter from the kids while Jessica hummed along with the radio. Connor seemed relaxed, leaning back in his seat as if he hadn't a care in the world. Aaron's grip on the wheel was tight, his knuckles white, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to blow up now. Not when everything was almost in place. As they pulled into their neighborhood, Aaron cleared his throat, keeping his tone casual. "Hey, I need to stop by the hardware store real quick. Shouldn't take long." Jessica barely glanced up from her phone. "Sure, no problem. I'll get the kids inside and start unpacking." Connor seemed unfazed, already scrolling through his messages. Aaron couldn't help but wonder who else Connor had been messing around with behind everyone's back. It was infuriating to think that his brother could be so reckless and selfish, hurting everyone around him just to satisfy his own ego. Once he dropped them off, Aaron didn't head to the hardware store. Instead, he drove to his lawyer's office and parked around the corner, just in case. Taking a deep breath, he checked his phone for the files he had saved: texts, photos, and video evidence. Everything was meticulously backed up, labeled, and stored securely. His lawyer, Matt, greeted him with a firm handshake. "You okay, Aaron? You sounded tense on the phone." Aaron gave him a grim smile. "Yeah, just need some advice. Things are falling apart, and I need to make sure I'm protected." They sat down in the small office, and Aaron laid it all out. Every detail of the affair, every scrap of evidence, and his growing suspicion that Connor and Jessica had been planning this for a while. Matt listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When Aaron finished, Matt leaned back, his face serious. "It's a tough situation, but you've done the right thing by gathering evidence. Family court can get messy, especially if there's adultery involved. If you want to file for divorce, you're in a good position to protect your assets and maintain custody of the kids. The proof you've gathered will help your case significantly." Aaron nodded, his resolve strengthening. "I'm not just worried about the divorce. I want them both to face the consequences. I want the truth out there." Matt thought for a moment before replying. "One option is to confront them publicly, somewhere they can't deny it or twist the story. Another option is to expose the affair through social media or within your social circle. The key is to make sure it's undeniable, so they can't spin it against you." Aaron considered it. Public confrontation would be risky, but it would also make it impossible for Jessica and Connor to manipulate the narrative. He needed to make it so overwhelming that no one could possibly believe their lies. "Thanks, Matt," Aaron said, shaking his hand again. "I'll let you know when I'm ready to move forward with the divorce." Leaving the office, Aaron felt a sense of grim determination settle over him. He knew exactly what he needed to do. When he got home, Jessica was in the kitchen making lunch, while Connor had his feet up on the couch, flipping through channels like he owned the place. Aaron's stomach twisted with anger, but he kept his face neutral. Jessica looked up as he walked in. "Everything go okay at the store?" "Yeah," Aaron replied, giving her a tight smile. "Had to pick up a few things for work." He glanced at Connor, who barely acknowledged him. "That was fine. Let him be smug. It wouldn't last long." Over the next few days, Aaron carefully set up his final move. He planned a family gathering for the weekend, inviting his parents, a few close friends, and even some of Jessica's relatives. He made it sound like a casual get-together, just a barbecue to unwind after the camping trip. Jessica seemed delighted by the idea, more than happy to play the role of the doting wife. Connor, of course, was invited as well, playing the perfect, charming little brother. But Aaron knew that once everyone was gathered, he would make his move. He'd reveal the truth in front of everyone, playing the video of Connor and Jessica's betrayal on the big screen in the living room. Let them try to lie their way out of that. He didn't sleep much in the days leading up to it, running through every detail in his mind, making sure he had every piece of evidence ready. The betrayal had shattered him, but the thought of exposing them and reclaiming his dignity gave him the strength to push through. Finally, the day arrived. As guests filled the house, Jessica moved between the kitchen and living room, greeting everyone with her usual warmth. Connor, ever the charmer, cracked jokes and played with the kids like he didn't have a care in the world. Aaron watched them both, his expression cold and unreadable. When it was time for everyone to gather for dinner, he cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "Hey everyone, before we eat, I just wanted to share something with you all. It's been on my mind for a while, and I think it's time to get it out in the open. Jessica glanced at him curiously, while Connor gave a casual shrug. Aaron moved to the TV, pulling out a USB stick from his pocket. As he plugged it into the smart TV, Jessica's smile faltered. "Aaron, what are you doing?" she asked, a nervous edge to her voice. He didn't answer, just hit play. The room fell into stunned silence as the video started. Connor's voice filled the room, followed by Jessica's unmistakable laugh. The camera caught everything. The kisses, the whispers, the betrayal. Guests froze, eyes wide, as the evidence played out in brutal, unforgiving clarity. Jessica's face went ghostly pale, while Connor looked like he'd just been punched in the gut. No one spoke, too shocked to process what they were seeing. When the video ended, Aaron turned to face them, his expression icy and resolute. "Now you know. Now everyone knows." Aaron looked back one last time at the chaos he had left behind. Jessica was on her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, while Connor stood frozen, face pale and eyes wide with disbelief. Their parents, normally so quick to defend Connor, no matter what, couldn't even look at him. His father's face was twisted with pure disgust, and his mother was silently crying, her hands covering her mouth. Friends and family stood around, whispering in shock, some shaking their heads, others exchanging glances filled with judgment and disdain. Connor tried to step forward, his voice shaky and desperate. "Aaron, wait, let me explain." Aaron turned slowly, his gaze icy and unwavering. "Explain what? That you destroyed my marriage? That you betrayed me in the worst possible way? You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify your disgusting actions. You ruined everything, Connor. Everything. You threw away your own brother for what? A fling? A rush? You're nothing but a selfish, manipulative coward." Jessica cried harder, crawling toward Aaron, her hands reaching out as if begging for forgiveness. "Please, Aaron, I made a mistake. I can fix it. I love you." Aaron's face hardened. "You love me? You call this love? You spat on our vows. You threw away our family for cheap thrills with my own brother. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our kids. You shattered everything we built together. And now you want forgiveness? You don't deserve it." He looked at Connor again, his words cutting like shards of glass. "I hope you're proud of yourself. You always wanted to be the favorite, didn't you? You couldn't stand that I had a good life, a good wife, a beautiful family. Well, congratulations, you ruined it. But guess what? You don't win, because now everyone sees you for what you truly are, a liar and a cheat. You think our parents are going to take your side this time? You think anyone here will stand by you after what you did?" Connor glanced around, realizing that no one was coming to his defense. Not his parents, not his friends, no one. Aaron's father stepped forward, his expression fierce and unyielding. "I raised you to be a better man than this," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "But clearly I failed. You're no son of mine. You're a disgrace. Don't bother coming back to our house. I won't let you in. You betrayed your own brother and tore this family apart. You're on your own now." Connor looked like he had been slapped, his confidence crumbling into nothing. He looked at his mother for help, but she shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "How could you, Connor?" she whispered. "How could you hurt your brother like this? I don't even know who you are anymore." Aaron turned away, his heart pounding, but his mind surprisingly clear. He didn't care about Connor's pleas or Jessica's sobs. They were nothing to him now. He had given them everything: trust, love, loyalty, and they had destroyed it without a second thought. He walked out the door, his footsteps echoing behind him, leaving the shattered remnants of his past behind. Outside, he took a deep breath, the fresh air filling his lungs with a sense of newfound freedom. It wasn't over. There would still be the legal battles, custody issues, and healing from the pain. But at least the lies were gone. The truth was out. In the following weeks, word spread quickly about what had happened. Jessica moved in with her parents after being publicly shamed and ostracized by most of their social circle. Connor lost his job after Aaron exposed the affair to his boss. Turns out Connor had been bragging to his coworkers about his conquest, and the company didn't take kindly to the scandal. His reputation was ruined, and he found himself jobless and living on a friend's couch, with no one left to bail him out. Aaron focused on rebuilding his life, moving to a new house with the kids, finding a fresh start far away from the place where everything fell apart. It wasn't easy, but every day felt a little lighter. He took up new hobbies with the kids, filled their lives with laughter and love, and slowly but surely found peace again. One evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from an unknown number, but he recognized the tone immediately. Jessica, I miss you. Please, give me a chance to make it right. I love you. I need you. Please don't shut me out. Connor was a mistake. I never stopped loving you. Aaron deleted the message without replying. He wasn't interested in hearing her excuses anymore. He deserved better, and so did his kids. He wasn't going to live in the shadows of betrayal any longer. As the sky darkened, Aaron looked up, feeling an unexpected sense of relief and pride. He had survived the worst, exposed the truth, and reclaimed his life from the ashes of their lies. They thought they had broken him, but in the end, he was the one standing tall, stronger, wiser, and finally free. Wow, what a roller coaster of betrayal and revenge. Do you think Connor and Jessica got what they deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more shocking tales of betrayal and justice. Your support means the world to us.